Welcome ladies, gents, and NBs. Today I want to talk about grifters. They're kind of these goofy people who just show up on TV yelling about one thing or another. They'll talk about like the world is falling apart, or the woke mob, or the ABC mafia, or whatever. You know, these strange phrases that sound kind of out of pocket to the average person. Now, grifting really isn't a party-specific sort of thing. It happens in both the right and the left on the political spectrum, but it happens a lot more on the right simply because the right is willing to spend a shit ton of money on its propaganda machine when compared to the left. And the sad reality is that most of the time, right-wing grifters' views can really only be described as reactionary, where all they really seek to do is to bring back the past status quo and prevent any advancement that does not benefit them specifically. Now, the main way this happens is through the reform of laws. Like, we can look at Roe v. Wade being overturned, you know, these fundamental rights that have been given to people and they're revoking them. And then we can also kind of just see it in just like racism and transphobia, these new groups that are gaining voices and gaining this stance, they are gaining rights as people, and reactionaries are trying to revoke those rights. I mean, you can see the shitloads of legislation being put in to prevent trans people specifically from even existing. And we could also see just people being openly and blatantly racist. I mean, look at this. That is Steven Crowder doing the oldest form of racism in the books. And the sad thing is, it's not even original. Like, I'm making a joke here, obviously. Like, nowadays we use dog whistles and such, and he's just too lazy to do that. It's too hard. He has to go to, like, the old caricatures, you know? We can even see the famous Tucker Carlson being mad about the fact that the M&Ms, he doesn't want to have a drink with them anymore. Like, what? Who thinks about this? And this man is on one of the most popular media and news networks out there. And he's complaining that the M&Ms, he doesn't want to have a drink with them, claiming that the woke mob is doing this. Like, no normal person thinks about this. And this whole viewpoint is really built upon these false premises, and it only seeks to harm society and its advancements towards a greater and safer society for everyone. Sure, white people aren't going to be able to be racist anymore, but I think the average person doesn't care about that. Now, I did briefly touch upon grifters' motivation, which is really money. That's kind of like the main point of a grift, is to squeeze as much money out of it. But you may be wondering, like, why do people pay these people? And really, what is the scale of the money going into these grifters? And simply put, grifters are simply like these sock puppets for the billionaires, you know? These billionaires will put millions of dollars in to fund these grifters in the form of, you know, donations, in air quotes. And then these grifters will just spout whatever lies the billionaires tell them to. And the money that is being spent isn't pocket change. I mean, there was a study that found between 2015 and 2018, the 21 top conservative media funders donated a total of $106 million to different media corporations. That is $106 million going into media. This money could have been put anywhere, you know? You could have gone into housing, medical care. I mean, people are dying in the streets, and these guys thought, let's put it into media to get our viewpoints out there. And this money, this isn't like just like out of the blue. These people are used to this. I mean, you can see Steven Crowder throwing a temper tantrum because his $50 million contract didn't have the clauses he wanted. And listen, I'm never going to argue against workers fighting for their rights. But that's a $50 million contract. That is something the average person will never even imagine of seeing, and you're complaining about that. Like, how absurd is that? And talking about absurd, the average person looking into these worlds that these grifters create for their viewers is insane. I mean, they talk about like pedophiles just openly walking about and grooming children. Like, the average person wants that. And like this, we live in like a 1984 society where every single thought and action is controlled by the woke mob, or else you'll get cancered. These absurd ideas that these grifters create. And I had that same exact thought when like I first started learning about these people. It's like, this is absurd. They live in like the upside down from like Stranger Things. And also the fact that these people have massive audiences is crazy. And I was wondering, like, why do they? And the more I thought about it and like looked into it, I realized kind of what they provided to their audiences. Now, a quick side note, like, the world is constantly changing. And I mean, in the past few years, have completely deconstructed and reconstructed my worldview. And it does get a little heavy learning about the things that kind of cause this and learning about these things. And these grifters kind of provide the almost get-rich-quick scheme to changing your worldview. They are not even changing your worldview. They just provide the get-rich-quick scheme to the problems and the solution. They provide the answer to the audience with no critical thinking. No really hard work is required to obtain it. No research, you know. They just provide these easy answers. And that provides the audience the sense of comfort that, oh, it's just the other guys. It's just like this other weird group that we're never going to make contact to. It provides them a sense that they don't play a part in the problem, and the problem never included them. Like, arbitrary, if they are currently doing the things that cause the problem or not, they never have been, they never will be, and they aren't. And because of this sort of relationship that they have, these people are used to just taking in what these grifters say with no second thought. And this creates this really strange power dynamic that allows grifters to squeeze as much money out of their audiences. I mean, you will see these absurd kind of ad lead-ins, like talking about the woke mob, and then you can see Ben Shapiro being like, and then Jeremy's razors, they aren't woke, they'll just be openly racist. I'm obviously making a joke, but like, they'll do these really strange ad lead-ins that make no sense because it doesn't need to make sense. Their audience doesn't care if it makes sense. Their audience just baby bird eats from the grifters. Now, grifting really harms everybody included besides the grifter and whoever is kind of above them, whoever funds them. It harms their audience because they're being squeezed dry like SpongeBob, like when he's on the fucking light table in the movie, like they're squeezing money. But it also harms the average person. It leads to hate crimes being committed and innocent people being killed. Like, hate crimes are the major consequence of grifting. It doesn't occur a lot, although it's definitely been fucking ramping up in recent years. But the time it does occur, it is massive. It leads to tens to even hundreds of people being killed because of this. Now, people commit hate crimes. You can see that from the clips I showed in the intro. Like, it's happening a lot. And those clips were just in the past year. I mean, there was the Buffalo grocery store shooting where this 19-year-old white dude walked into a grocery store and just opened fire on 10 black people. And like, he chose to shoot black people. Like, those were the only people who received his violence. And it was reported that he believed in the Great Replacement, this absurd notion repeated by grifters that Democrats and the woke mob are trying to replace white people, which is just kind of absurd. Now, Sean has a really great video going really in depth and like disproving it. It'll probably be up on the screen. I tried to point, I don't have a camera. Never mind. But we also have like the Club Q shooting where a 22-year-old decided to just walk in and open fire on an LGBTQ bar. Sorry. Like he chose that bar on purpose because they were LGBTQ+. He bought into this notion that like gay and trans people are grooming children. That is rhetoric spoken by these grifters. Now, normal people don't decide to just go shoot up a grocery store or like a bar. The average person doesn't. But grifters are able to turn the average person into these radicals. They are able to radicalize the average person. And they have a specific process, pipeline to turn the average person into this insane radical. Now, they'll appeal to the average person by making a few observable statements about how kind of shitty life is, because it is shitty. We live in one of like the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression as just kind of average life. Like the comparison of wages to inflation is absurd and it's never seen before. So they'll talk about that and they'll be like, hey, your life is shitty. But then they'll make this really strange jump to like, it's the woke mob or something, or it's the ABC mafia or whatever. It is the same exact tactics that the Nazis used. Like, sure, that may feel like the jump, but it's the same thing that they did. The Nazis were like, hey, we're in a recession right now. People are dying, but it's the Jewish people. The Jewish did it. And that's the same thing that these grifters do. It's important to realize the similarity of these things because the Nazis were grifters. They took advantage of this horrible situation that Germany was put into. And then they took advantage of that and gained money and power and tried to take over the fucking world. Like, these people, I can't say that all of them, but some of them, like Tucker Carlson, would definitely do the same. Now listen, this doesn't absolve these monsters who commit these hate crimes. They're still monsters, but a lot of them wouldn't turn into these monsters without these grifters. These grifters hold a major portion of the blame. But these grifters aren't alone. Like I said before, they are funded by these billionaires and these companies to spout their viewpoints, to spout these billionaires' viewpoints. So they are a major portion, but they are just the sock puppets. They hold the blame, but they don't hold all of it. Since these grifters are really just sock puppets to whoever decides to really fund them, they sound kind of goofy, especially to professionals, but also to like the average person. Now, I'm not going to deny that a lot of grifters are kind of just stupid, but there's also an intentional aspect to this kind of stupidity. It provides a sort of shield to these grifters that allows them to spout whatever horrid lies that fit into their funders' narrative. And if they are called out on their bullshit, like if they're told directly that they're lying, they can be like, oh, my bad, I didn't look into it. Or they can double down, which just kind of makes them look stupider. Sorry, grammar. But we can see this happening in real time. Like we can look at Tucker Carlson talking about how like trans people are permanently disfiguring their children's bodies, or like Bill Maher will spout the same rhetoric. Like these people talk about this field that they know nothing about because like I looked up, I did a 20-second Google search and I found this. Like we can see that most of the procedures for gender transitioning are one, non-permanent and often don't include surgery. Like you just take hormones or puberty blockers and they are completely reversible. So these people are just talking about things they know nothing about. And I mean, you could even look at like Matt Walsh's What Is a Woman documentary. Like he's talking to a professor that is explaining to him a very nuanced subject about what is gender versus sex. And this man makes the absurd decision to like fucking like 12 seconds later or whatever, like the SpongeBob transition on this teacher teaching him a subject. He decides to just skip over it. Like, these people don't care. They just want things that fit into their narrative. And also, I want to dive deeper into this trans thing because I think it is really important. In the simple statement that, like, trans people are permanently disfiguring their bodies and children's bodies, there are a few fallacies kind of held into that simple statement. I mean, for one, you could argue that any surgery is permanently disfiguring one's body. Like, if I got my appendix removed, you know, because I'd die if I didn't, that is permanently disfiguring my belly button, so we should legislate away the right to have your appendix removed. Like, that is the same exact argument that these people are doing. But it's also just, the statement is just completely false. I mean, you can look at that graphic I showed. Like, it's just a completely false understanding of what happens in gender transitioning. And this exposes that they have no idea what is actually going on. And also, this study found that of the people who transitioned, only 3% actually regretted transitioning. And often those people can detransition, but a lot of them still didn't. So to make these claims like Tucker Carlson and Bill Maher do is just a cruel and gross misuse of their platform to harm innocent people. These people just want to exist, and these people and grifters are fighting tooth and nail to legislate their rights away. And I mean, these people don't hold a solid stance on anything. They have no morals, no baseline. They just kind of say whatever they want. I mean, you can look at Tucker Carlson saying that Kyle Rittenhouse was doing what others should have, but they didn't, when he decided to open fire on BLM protesters.
How shocked are we that 17-year-olds with rifles decided they had to maintain order when no one else would?
So he's supporting the violence on these protesters. But then at the same time, he can be seen condemning police officers for trying to prevent the January 6ers from storming the Capitol. Like there was Congress meeting going on. There was important people there. Obviously, I'm not going to support these people. These people are horrid people that just ruin people's lives. But, like, in Tucker's mind, Congress people and important people are there, and he is condemning the police officers for trying to stop them from storming the Capitol. And I mean, even in the own clips that he shows, you can see the protesters fucking swinging on the police officers. Like, the police officers were obviously violent, but Tucker talks nothing about how the protesters are openly aggravating the police officers. He's only focusing on condemning the police officers for what they're doing. This is because they only have their internal biases and the billionaires' biases to run off. They have no moral standing. They simply say what they feel. And that's not wrong in itself, but we do need some critical thinking. And that is something these people do not have in any shape, way, or form. Now, you guys may hate these people. I definitely do. They just do so much harm to the world. But it's important not to really lose scope. It's important to realize that these people are really just a byproduct of the system. That doesn't absolve them of any blame for the horrid actions that they cause. But it's important to realize that the system enables this to happen. This capitalist system allows these people to get away with the horrible things they're doing, and the billionaires to get away with the horrible things they're doing through this system. All right, that's really all I had to say. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm trying to figure out my style, you know. Any advice in the comments is great.